Good evening and welcome to our COVID-19 update. I'm Ladi Akeridoluale. Here are the highlights at this hour. Federal authorities give very cautious signals about testing and sample collection and reduced caseload for Nigeria. Several states rule out reopening of schools for now, just as Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 formalizes protocols for incoming passengers on international flights to Nigeria. India's economy shrinks by 23.9% in the second quarter of 2020, just as the country broke the world record for single-day infections at almost 80,000, and its first female cardiologist dies of the virus at the age of 103. We'll begin tonight from the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 briefing in Abuja, from where its chairman, Boss Mustafa, raised the alarm on the seeming complacency about the status of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The secretary to the government of the Federation used statistics to show that the seeming reduction in the numbers of confirmed cases has coincided with a drop in the numbers of tests conducted nationwide and cautioned against reading too much into those numbers. He also identified 173 vaccine candidates as at the 28th of August in various stages of development. Mr. Mustafa admits that there is significant fatigue from all who just want to be done with COVID-19, but also says that now is not the time to give in or give up.
The World Health Organization has published a draft landscape of COVID-19 candidate vaccines. As at 28th of August 2020, a total 173 candidate vaccines are under evaluation. 33 are under clinical evaluation, 8 at phase 3 trials. 143 candidate vaccines are in preclinical evaluation. As the Presidential Task Force has always maintained, early testing, detection, tracing, and treatment remains the second best option for dealing with this pandemic, with the first being staying safe. The vaccine will come with its own protocol, but right now we have something that we can do. And that's my call to the entire nation, that this is not the time to be exhausted or to be fatigued with COVID, because COVID is not going to abate just because you are tired of it. It will continue on its ravaging effect. It will continue with its spread at the community level. You go outside Abuja and visit some of these states, you wonder whether they live on a different planet. Totally oblivious of what you are doing. When you assume with a mask, you are like a masquerade that has just appeared on the scene. And as a matter of fact, in some communities, they think you are infected. That's why you are putting on the mask. But it's important that we continue to drive the message that for now, no cure, no vaccine in sight. It's only care and management if unfortunately you get infected.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanere, says states where elections are holding create a risk of infection as a result of campaign activities. Dr. Hanere said this is a source of worry to members of the PTF, and it creates a lot of challenges in the effort to curb the community spread of the virus. He also says efforts must be intensified to reduce fatality rates in the country, just as a ministerial subcommittee is to be set up to examine the reason behind fading sample collection numbers.
There may be more work to do and many more challenges ahead. Among the challenges will be the reason for us to worry about states where elections are contemplated, and campaign activities have led to a lot of frenzy and movement that create the risk of infection, while testing in these areas may decrease due to distraction. I shall commission a study group of the Ministerial Expert Advisory Committee to begin processes to examine all these developments and to bring up new knowledge which can guide response or may have an implication on government decision-making and spending. With a total of 1,013 fatalities recorded so far, the case fatality rate also slightly dropped to 1.88%, and the gradual fall is possibly an indication of improvement in response and treatment strategies to contain COVID-19, but it is also a common global trend. As long as we still record fatalities from this case, there is no room for complacency until we meet our goal to reduce fatality rate to less than 1%.
The number of
Staying with the PTF briefing, its national coordinator, Dr. Sani Aliu, has announced that the quarantine period for travelers coming into Nigeria has been reduced to 8 days. Dr. Aliu said that within the period, the risk of transmission would have been reduced significantly.
We have reduced the period of quarantine or self-isolation from 2 weeks down to a minimum of 8 days. So that would allow people to get on with their lives much earlier on. We know that if you test immediately on arrival, you pick about 7% of those that would PCR convert. If you test at day 5 of arrival, you pick about 85% based on the modeling and the scientific data available. If you test at day 7, you pick about 94%. And if you test at day 14, you pick about 98 to 99%. So there's no doubt testing at day 14 is the most reliable because it will pick up the whole incubation period. But we know that it's incredibly difficult for a lot of people to lock themselves up for 2 weeks in self-isolation. So that's why we've taken the pragmatic approach of saying 8 days, and the assumption is that the majority of people, if you really confine yourself to those 8 days, you should be fine. We should be able to minimize the risk of transmission. For the country, of course, it's important we don't spread COVID to other parts of the world. Different countries have different requirements for travel. Increasingly, a lot of airlines are asking for negative COVID PCR results before you even board. And the laboratories that are being set up now, the private labs, will also provide those services, and you should be able to get results that would enable you to fly. At this point in time, we do not want the public health laboratories to be used for travel-related purposes.
the number of
And the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, the NCDC, has been using the statistics month by month to explain the sharp downward spiral in the number of samples collected and tests conducted for COVID-19 in Nigeria. The representative of the NCDC Director General, Mrs. Elsie Ilori, did this today at the PTF briefing in Abuja.
The number of states that are now collecting less samples have increased to 32 in August. And then in terms of the increase in samples, about 1,000 per state. In the month of July, we had 13 states that actually collected over 1,000 samples. Now for August, no state met that target. That means we had 0 states collecting over 1,000. And then in terms of the states with over 1,000 samples in the month of July, we have 23 that collected in July, while only 18 for the whole of July. And for the whole of August, only 18 reported. Because our priority since the beginning of the outbreak has been for us to be able to detect, trace, isolate cases of COVID so that we can prevent further spread of the virus. And for us to be able to do that, we should be able to collect samples, be able to detect, collect the samples, and isolate if they are confirmed. However, in a country of over 200 million people across 774 local governments, This resource intensive is very rigorous.
The number of
One of the fallouts of the COVID-19 pandemic was the closure of several learning institutions globally. But while students were at home or are at home, schools found a way to keep them busy through e-learning. In our next report, we'll look at how this e-learning has been able to help bridge the education gap in some cases.
The global COVID-19 pandemic is having a ripple effect on every aspect of the global economy, including the education sector, forcing many countries to shut down schools temporarily to contain the spread of the virus, particularly among the vulnerable population. This new normal has also opened up different ideas and creative digital platforms for students to learn from and bridge the education gap orchestrated by the pandemic.
Technology has been able to bridge the gap significantly for children not to miss out so much, even though they can't go to school at the moment. We've been able to reach out to parents, to children globally, for them to participate in our STEM challenge. They are expected to use recyclable materials at home, such as papers, used cereal boxes, used cans, and recyclable plastics, just about anything that they can find at home to carry out the projects available.
Regardless of the closure, some schools still find ways to convert the classroom experience to video conference. All teachers and students need is to own a digital device and connect to the internet. But these measures have their limitations, as several learners of all ages are still left confined to their homes.
We are still in the emerging phase as a country. So we've had it good, bad, and ugly. So the good is that, without the four walls of the classroom, learning can still happen. That has been really, really validated. Now, the bad is that not everybody has access to this kind of learning experiences, and that is troubling. It's just maybe about 10% or 15% of students that can really have the full-blown online experience.
Even though some schools are able to hold a forth this period, there are challenges that still hold them back.
For instance, we don't all have light. Some people are dependent on generators, some people have not had light in their areas for days. The second is internet connection. And the last requirement for e-learning is a device. Either it's a smartphone, it's a tablet, or a computer. And you have to ask yourself, how many students, parents have access to these things?
Although the Lagos State government has fixed September the 14th as the resumption date for tertiary institutions, while primary and secondary schools may reopen tentatively by September the 21st, the reality will be for parents, students and tutors to adjust to the new normal of complying with COVID-19 protocols, while remote learning will remain that valuable alternative for those who still have doubts about the reopening of schools.
Let's talk now to Mr. Otto Orendam, founder of the Slum to School Initiative. He joins us via Skype here in Lagos. Good evening, Mr. Orendam. Thank you for your time. It does seem obvious that this e-learning, remote learning, whatever you may want to call it, applies to a very, very small segment of the population it is meant to cater for. That in itself starts by being a problem, doesn't it?
You're very correct. I think it's very obvious that the COVID-19 pandemic was a huge shock to the world. I wouldn't just say it was specifically targeted at Nigerians. We could see its effect globally. And I think everyone is also learning to adjust. And I believe that the future is right here, and everyone would gradually get used to what we call the new normal. Education in itself will be disrupted, but that's going to take a while. You know, we will get to start seeing a new way of learning, new developments. You know, technology has definitely come to stay, and blended learning will be something that everyone would definitely embrace. So I think whilst we can see lots of challenges, we need to be very optimistic to see the potentials that are embedded in behind all of this. And I feel that it's a great opportunity because there's so many opportunities. There's a series of benefits that this would expose our learners to and help us really, maximize the potentials that's within us.
Let me jump in. Let me jump in at this stage and talk about. There seems to be a dichotomy here. I mean, even if we zero it in to Nigeria or whether we take it globally, there are those in the urban centers, children of middle-class parents or higher-class parents who can afford the device, who can afford the data, and who have the access by way of remote experiences with their teachers and other such teaching models. And then you have this large majority in the semi-urban rural areas. Your Slum to School initiative, for example, deals with people who are in urban areas but are very, very, very disadvantaged. Now, how do you bridge this kind of gap, seeing, as you say, that this is the new normal?
So I think that there's a whole lot that we could do. Firstly, I believe that, of course, at the moment, we could also say that we have a huge number of children who are not in school. There's a very huge number, and that number has continuously increased. I read a recent report that says today we have 16 million children who are not in school. And this means that even if school resumes tomorrow, these children would not be in school. So understanding that we are a very diverse nation, we have a very huge divide between the haves and the have-nots. It's very obvious that when we come to the conversation around technology, there will also be an apparent reality, that will face us when we, with access to devices, data, and technology. But if we should look at, Nigeria 20 years ago, we could see that you could actually count the number of people who had mobile phones, who had internet connectivity. Today, over 80% of Nigerians use mobile phones. And so I want us to see the positive side of this. The future is going to be very, very digitalized. We are already in a technology-driven, society. And whilst we can see there's so many challenges, I want us to actually even see the possible side of all of this. And of course, today we know that there's so many children who really can't learn because of that, that's that challenge. But I would always want us to be positive and believe that if we're very intentional, I always say we need to be intentional. So where we are presently, we can see there's a huge challenge. But how can we convert all the challenges we face today into an opportunity for our nation? I think this is where leadership comes in. This is where our education ministry needs to start thinking innovatively to say, what can we do to actually position ourselves in a place of opportunity? And there's so much that can be done. I think it's just for us to start, thinking innovatively.
In that case, we can certainly hope that the education ministry and the other authorities there will listen to what you've had to say and others like you. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Otto Orandam, on the program this evening.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break, and when we return, we will be talking a little bit more about this e-learning platform and what it portends for education, both in the country and globally. And then we'll also bring you the latest in the NCDC COVID-19 case numbers. Please stay on with us. Welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned here on our COVID-19 update. We'll start off this segment with some of the good news coming out of Lagos today, where its State Commissioner for Health, Professor Aki Abayomi, has tested negative to COVID-19 after 9 days of isolation and treatment. Professor Abayomi shared the news on his Twitter handle, thanking the entire members of the Executive Council of Lagos for the overwhelming support and outpouring of love throughout the period of his treatment. He added that he's grateful to God for the tremendous progress being made in the fight against COVID-19 in Lagos and urges Nigerians to keep observing all COVID-19 regulations in public spaces as well as remain vigilant. 138 new COVID-19 cases have been recorded in Nigeria within the last 24 hours, as announced by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. The cases are reported from 13 states and the Federal Capital Territory, where Plateau leads again, this time with 55 cases. Lagos has 15, Ebonyi 11, same with Oyo. Abia has 8, Anambra 7, same with the FCT and Rivers. Kaduna has 6, Ondo 5, Kwara 3, Bauchi, Benue, and Edo 1 case each. 199 people have also joined the list of discharged COVID-19 patients. These new recoveries were recorded in 11 states. 46 people were discharged in Plateau, followed by Bauchi, Abia, Kaduna, Ondo, Ekiti, Anambra, Rivers, the FCT, Osun, and Ogun states. From the 403,349 COVID-19 samples tested so far in Nigeria, 53,865 cases have been confirmed. 41,513 people have recovered from the virus, and 1,013 deaths have been recorded in the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Some states, including Ogun, Katsina, Bauchi, Enugu, Sokoto, Gombe, and Ekiti, have ruled out full reopening of schools, including tertiary institutions, as part of the successes recorded so far in the case against COVID-19. On its part, the Ogun State government says it is not in a hurry to reopen tertiary institutions, secondary and primary schools. The state government says it will avoid taking an uninformed decision to reopen the schools. In Ekiti State, the coordinator of the state's COVID-19 response task force, Professor Bolaji Aluko, said the state government would observe happenings in the secondary schools with students taking terminal examinations before making further decisions. The Enugu State government says it is in contact with the Federal Ministry of Education, saying there were no plans to reopen schools yet. In the north-central state of Bauchi, its Commissioner for Education, Dr. Aliu Tilde, said Bauchi does not follow anyone. We will open when we are ready. While in Katsina State, officials say there is no notice yet on resumption of schools in the state. While parents and guardians in Yobe State are asking the federal government to reopen schools for other classes across the country, since, according to them, successes have been recorded after the resumption of exit classes. According to them, there has not been a high record of students being infected with COVID-19 while at school, hence the need to consider the reopening of other classes.
It's been 5 months since these children have been home due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and these parents want their wards back to school. Since the resumption of students in exit classes, parents believe it is now time for other classes to resume.
If you look at it virtually, the students have almost lost a year already. They came back during the second time exams. Some of them have not even finished the exam before the closure, and the whole time is gone. The third time is running out. You see, almost a year wasted. So it will be a very good thing if the appropriate authority will come to the aid of parents by opening schools so that these pupils will go back to school to complete their school section.
The students are also complaining of the long stay at home.
I've stayed for almost 5 months at home, without doing nothing, and we are tired of staying at home. Some of us have even forgot what we have been taught in school. Some are not reading their books, so the federal government have to open the schools for us in order to go and continue with our studies. The more the federal government are delaying the opening of the schools in the country, the more the students get to forget what they have been taught in school.
Resumption of the other classes will be cheery news to both parents and students, but the teachers are saying extra lessons will be the only solution for students to meet up with their syllabus.
Rushing will not be the best. Instead, we should have them at heart. That is, we should be passionate about teaching and learning. If we are passionate about the learners, a lot of things will be done. Create additional time for them, maybe during their prep time or weekend programs, to see that we meet up with what the learner have missed. If not, we will see the outcome of this particular period they missed when they come to the time where they are going to write their final exams. You will see that something may come that they didn't even have idea of it, in which is going to affect them negatively.
As the last quarter of the year sets in, education experts warn that necessary measures need to be put in place to allow possible resumption of students, including those in tertiary institutions.
Let's talk now to Mr. Wale Ogunjobi, the Chief Executive Officer of Sabi Teach. He joins us via Skype from the Isoro area of Lagos. Good evening, Mr. Ogunjobi. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
This whole issue of e-learning has come as a child of necessity, has caught a lot of people by surprise, and is not yet available to most students who actually require it. What has been your experience with e-learning during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you. Actually, for us, our experience has been very interesting because it's as such that the whole COVID-19 is unveiling the issue of social inequality in our society. Okay, so we have some people that can afford to pay for the services, while some cannot even afford anything close to that. For us in this season, it's been a season of giving back and also servicing those that are able to afford it. And for us, it's just a point out that, the educational sector is not balanced as regards social inequality here.
The other thing, of course, is that while all of this is happening, apart from the children who are out of school, that is those who were not in school to begin with, COVID or no COVID, those who are in school, some of them are getting left behind now because they don't have access, as you point out, to these e-learning facilities, while others do. And yet everyone is going to be judged by the same standards, the same exams, and so on. How is that going to work out in terms of the quality of what each pupil gets to take away?
Yes, so that's the issue, because you cannot judge or you cannot set examination for students that have different access to education at this very point in time. It cannot work. So for us, it's still very not clear as regards the right thing to do at this very point in time. Because what we are looking at is a situation where everyone can have access to equal quality education and at this point in time. But we in the private sector can only do our part. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we're able to reach out to over 5,000 students for free. But that is just a minute percentage of students that cannot access quality education. But I believe that things should be put in place so that those will not be left, those people that cannot access or pay for such services will not be left behind, because it's not proper for you to judge or to set examinations for students that do not have access to quality education and for those that can afford it. For instance, the ongoing WAEC examination. It will surprise so many of us to see that most students in the government school might not even do well, because the only access they had to access learning during the pandemic was on media, the TV, the radio, and even most of them could not even, subscribe to watch such, TV shows or learning platform online. So for us, we're really looking at a situation where there can be a balance in terms of quality education for, both set of students.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ogunjobi, Chief Executive Officer, Sabi Teach, for your time on the program this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delta State government says it is still ensuring that schools in the state are complying with the COVID-19 protocols as directed by the NCDC and the Ministry of Education. Its Commissioner for Basic and Secondary Education, Patrick Uka, who is going around various schools in the 3 senatorial districts across the state as students write the West African Examination Council exams, commended the students for their compliance to the COVID-19 protocols and comportment, which according to him shows that they are really prepared for the tasks ahead. According to the Commissioner, more desks and chairs will be provided to accommodate more students in compliance with a social distancing protocol to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
quite impressive with our students. I can see orderliness in the classroom, everybody with their face masks, the social distance were maintained. And I saw the Veronica pockets everywhere, and which is to say that as far as COVID-19 is concerned, we have prepared well for it. And I also believe that with some of the students we spoke to, they are quite happy that they are prepared for the exams, and they are equally quite confident. So we just pray God that they will remember what they read and pass well.
We talk now to Dr. Riyad Mohammed, consultant family physician and field epidemiologist. He joins us via Skype from Kano. Dr. Mohammed, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for, I'm happy to be here.
Are you surprised by the fact that there is a drop in the number of cases in the country, confirmed cases of COVID-19, at the same time as there is a drop in the number of tests that we are conducting?
Well, you know, this is the epic picture we are now receiving at the moment. But talking about are we prepared or not? That is really what I think should be the question here, because the normal trend of the epidemiology of outbreak is that, you know, it reaches its peak, then it assumes a straight line before it starts dropping. But the picture we are seeing now in the country is the picture is showing us that probably there may be a decline, but it's too early to say whether there is the community transmission is dropping per se. Really, it's too early to say that. Probably, there is a reduction in the rate of the testing we do. That may be a factor, and so really, as an epidemiologist, I feel we should not really believe that it's really dropping per se.
Let me ask you then, using Kano as an example. I mean, you're based in Kano. At the beginning of this crisis, Kano was one of the epicenters. We had that rush of unexplained deaths followed by the meetings and then the verbal autopsies that took place and all of that. What is the situation in Kano now, particularly as it relates to testing, case treatment, and discharges?
Well, the situation in Kano now is, the evolution of the COVID-19 in Kano really is initially the threshold of persons with test is high. And that the results coming out is showing that there are a lot of cases of COVID-19. But as time goes on, the rate at which people come out for the testing and the number of alerts we receive has actually dropped. So that may be a factor we are seeing at the moment. And concerning the issue of the death you've mentioned, there are a lot of scientific reasons to either associated or dissociated with COVID-19. Our social culture is such that persons that are necrosed or persons that die, we don't do the testing as early as possible, so we cannot really attribute the high number of deaths to COVID-19. But as scientists, we cannot now come and rightly say that it is not COVID-19 because this high number of deaths occurred during the era of COVID-19. So we are just in a situation where, you cannot come and stick out your neck and say it is truly COVID-19, but then, it's not, scientifically you cannot come out and say it is not COVID-19. But the picture I see in Kano at the moment, because of there is low rate of testing, the results also equivalently is also low. Probably may be the reason we are seeing low number of cases of COVID-19. But I don't think really it's too early. At this moment now, we should not celebrate. It is difficult for us to come out and say now that we are happy the outbreak is over.
For the very first time in quite a while, the presidential task force talked about fatigue, that people are simply tired about being told about the numbers, they are tired about hearing about prevention protocols, they are tired about hearing about restrictions. And that, unfortunately, this is not the time for us to give in or give up. In terms of compliance in Kano, I know that when the lockdown was first of all imposed in Kano, it was very, very stringent. But what is the situation now?
The situation in Kano is really, now people, there is a lot of comments from people, or perception of people that, you know, initially when the lockdown was enforced, people actually adhered to that. And you know, that the whole epidemic that time was new in the country, and people, there is this phobia, this apprehension that a new disease is coming. But as time went on, you know, people began to think, you know, is just maybe it's just an event in which the government is trying to propagate it and all that. So there are lots of misconception and misunderstanding of this disease as a whole. And in terms of really the preventive measures of adherence in the community, really the adherence to preventive measures actually is low. Although we don't have the figures, or no study is conducted to tell us the real figure. But if you're looking at it now, if you go to if you visit the communities, most of these communities actually, the adherence to these preventive measures actually is really poor.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Riyad Mohammed, consultant family physician and field epidemiologist from Kano. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, sir.
Outside our shores, most of South Africa's students are back at school, but it's been a rough ride, not just for the students, but also the authorities. The challenge was mainly what to do to keep the students learning despite location and socioeconomic backgrounds. Some successes were recorded, but the challenges made headlines several times on the road to this point.
The COVID-19 pandemic not only came with challenges for the education sector, but also opportunities for deepening or strengthening relevant alternative learning experiences for students in an increasingly digital world. And that's through the eyes of the optimists. While for primary and secondary schools, the Department of Basic Education in South Africa has a long string of resources to help learners stuck at home for so long, different socioeconomic backgrounds dictated the evenness of access to these resources, especially for the public schools. Internet access shut many out, although to address this, many schools provided physical work packs for the pupils. The hope, according to the department, is not to leave any learner behind, but the reality is that some are left behind somewhat. For tertiary institutions, non-contact learning was replaced by a multimodal remote learning system to provide digital, analog, and physical delivery of learning material for students. There were also deals with relevant organizations to provide devices and connectivity for students in the Students' Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. Some of the universities also had internal initiatives to support remote learning, especially for those who cannot afford. By September the 1st, 2/3 of the students at the universities will be allowed back for on-campus learning under Level 2 lockdown, and multimodal learning may still be here to stay.
The last 1/3, as per our plans now, will return to universities when we move to Level 1. So far, then they will continue working remotely through the multimodal learning and teaching mechanisms that have been put in place by the universities.
Zoom learning, Skype, WhatsApp video meetings, webinars, and off-campus library access to resources has bridged many learning gaps, enough to help salvage the 2020 academic year. But sustained access for those who fall within the cracks is still a challenge. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia for the COVID-19 update.
Let's talk now to Betty. She joins us from the commercial capital of South Africa, Johannesburg. Good evening, Betty. Welcome. Let's begin from the semi-urban rural areas. I mean, when we talk about e-learning, just as the situation is in Nigeria, most of the people outside the urban centers are left out of this. How have the people in the semi-urban rural areas fared, the students there fared with all this e-learning that went on during the pandemic lockdown period?
Of course, it goes without saying, it's been quite difficult for many of them. I know that here in South Africa, the government, apart from internet, they try to use mainstream media platforms to have lessons or have lecturers, provide their lessons, recorded lessons for them. But many of them, at some point, started pleading to government for them to return to school because, one, you use mainstream media, we don't have electricity. Or they don't have the radio signals because South Africa's topography in most of these areas is quite hilly and you have a lot of mountains. So even radio signals is a problem. So and then the issue of affordability, although government, especially for the tertiary institutions, tried a lot of initiatives to provide for those who do not have. But these realities are still coming to play in stopping them from having access. So it's been quite difficult, but things are improving now that they're being allowed back at school. For universities, not everybody, 2/3 will begin by 1/3 is already in school by tomorrow, 1st of September. Then for the primary schools now, you've had a lot of problems. So government tried a lot to have physical pads for physical school pads from the schools to the pupils, but it's difficult. And again, even for those who have access, those who are not used to using computers, who are just coming in contact with computers, it's a problem. And then those who have been using computers and have been living their lives online, it's very difficult, or it's not. I don't know which word to use now. It's difficult to assume that all of them will be able to translate their use of tech, into online learning. That's difficult. That takes a lot of discipline. So these are some of the challenges, apart from access and all that. Being able to translate your learning system into online, it's been difficult, but efforts have been made, different initiatives to just help them get in line or continue learning even while on the lockdown.
There are so many people who talk about how the students are faring, how they are trying to cope. A lot of what you've said about what students are doing and the initiatives to help students cope. But how about the teachers? I happen to know from the examples in Nigeria here that a lot of the teachers have found it difficult to make the adjustment from one place to another. What's the situation like over there?
Same problem for some areas. It's been quite difficult, and a lot of pressure has been on the teachers as well. Expectations. They too are parents. They too have the economic issues that have come up with the COVID, and then they're expected to measure up, ensure the safety of others, try to ensure their own safety as well, and then cope with helping the children to cope. So it's been difficult for the teachers, and we've seen the unions fighting back and forth with the authorities to ensure that the welfare of the teachers too is ensured in all of this, their safety. And the economic aspect as well for them, ensure that they're paid properly, and then generally their safety as well while they're getting to do their work. It's been difficult, and we've had situations where you have schools being attacked. A lot of schools, especially the primary, secondary schools, have been attacked, vandalized, where computers have been stolen, the odd Molotov cocktail thrown in there, and many schools burnt. This is traumatizing for those who have been, teachers went back before the pupils. So they've had to worry about their own safety, not just COVID safety as well, but their own physical safety while trying to get schools prepared to ensure that, as the scientists have have advised for children to start coming back to school. So it's been difficult all around for the pupils, for the authorities, as well as the teachers too.
Now, just before you go, I've got a minute to ask you this. I did hear you talk about lockdown phase 2. What does that exactly mean, and where is that going now, considering the fact that the state of national disaster is supposed to expire mid-September?
Lockdown level 2 allows for most things to be done. But many of the things allowed, especially economic activities, is being impacted by the fact that international elements or the international benefits or benefits you get from international players is still not allowed. The tourism sector, which is a big earner for the country, even manufacturing. I know that all along, goods were allowed to go across the borders, but it's still difficult. There's several conferencing. Many of these things are not have been affected by the fact that the borders are still closed. International travel is still not allowed. So aviation sector is affected, tourism sector is affected, the meetings that go on here, they're affected. Also, you have international, I don't know how to put it. Also, the international students who are stuck outside the country cannot come back. They will continue remote learning if they have access to internet, for example. So these ones are affected. That's what the president, the minister, Dr. Bladen Zimande, was saying, that the next batch, that's the last 1/3, most of the people within that last 1/3 are international students who are stuck outside. They can't come back. So probably the airspaces and the land borders will open by the time they move to level 1. We don't know. Numbers have gone down. The last 24 hours, we have new cases, just 1,985. So hopefully, if that is sustained, and no steps are taken backwards, maybe level 1 will come by September the 15th. If not, if we take steps backwards...
Betty, I'm sorry, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Completely run out of time. I did say a minute, but then you have so much information to pack into that minute. Thank you for your time this evening, and do continue to stay safe. Just before we go, the coronavirus pandemic is said to be impacting on India's economy, which contracted at the quickest pace on record in the second quarter, as the lockdowns imposed to help control the spread of infections also decimated consumer spending and investment. According to official statistics released today, the Indian economy shrank 23.9% in 3 months ending in June compared with the previous year. The slump is said to be worse than economists expected and is one of the most severe of any nation as a result of the pandemic. India has recorded more than 78,000 COVID-19 cases overnight, as well as more than 970 deaths, the 5th consecutive day when the COVID cases have increased by more than 75,000. India's COVID-19 tally rose beyond 3.6 million today, and the death toll also rose to 64,469. That's our COVID-19 update tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ladi Akredulale. For details of all the stories you've heard tonight, and indeed all other stories, please join us by logging on to channelstv.com. Good night.